Good morning, and I'm glad you're here today. There is so much going on that we really need to be aware of. First off, the plug, capoliticalreview.com. Please sign up for that. You're going to find some really interesting news there. It's a fun website, a very informative one too. Today we have Steve Frank back for another Friday Forum, and he's going to be telling us all of the stuff that's going on here in California and in the nation and whatnot. If you have questions today, please put them either in Q&A or in the chat and let us know if you have questions, comments, whatever. And with that, Steve, take it away. Thank you.
Wendy, thank you very much. This is going to be an exciting day in California and nationally. Yesterday, the Democrats in Sacramento introduced a bill to ban Devin Nunes, Doug LaMalfa, Young Kim, Daryl Issa, Kevin McCarthy, and 10 of our 11 members of Congress from serving in any public office. At the same time, the Southern Poverty Law Center has issued a demand that Congress expel half of the Republican members of Congress. The crime in both cases is that they question the legitimacy of the November election and therefore are not qualified to be members of Congress for their seditious actions. While the Washington effort by the Southern Poverty Law Center is not going to go anywhere, AOC has already called the Republican members of Congress terrorists. She's announced that she's afraid to be around any Republican members of Congress. And Nancy Pelosi has now provided her with armed guards to protect AOC from being around Republicans in the U.S. Capitol. But the bill in Sacramento, that's a troublesome one, because if I was a betting person, and I've never bought a lottery ticket, but if I was a betting person, I think that bill gets passed by the legislature. Not sure the governor will sign it, but I think the Assembly and State Senate will pass the bill. And then and it's signed, it then becomes a constitutional question as to whether a state can mandate regulations on who may be a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, or is that a constitutional decision on a federal level? Either way, this is an example of the fascist state in which we now live. We know about the cancel culture, which has taken off tens of thousands of people from social media, has banned President Trump from social media, those of his supporters. There's a bill in Congress to ban all people that publicly supported Donald Trump for president. That means everybody on this call, in one way or another, supported Donald Trump for re-election. That makes you seditious and therefore need to be taken off of social media to protect society from you. And who knows, maybe Zoom will do that too, because YouTube is already banning conservatives and conservative groups from YouTube. And they started about a year and a half ago with banning Dennis Prager's PragerU and about half of his YouTube selections on that platform. And from there, it's gotten to be a lot worse. So we are in a time of a totalitarian regime, both in Sacramento and in Washington. One of the most interesting statements came yesterday from the press secretary for President Biden. And she said, it doesn't matter if everyone has the vaccine. We will continue wearing masks and we will continue social distancing. Now, what she really meant to say is, we're not going to open up this nation. We're going to continue a lockdown of this nation, regardless of masks, regardless of social distancing, even regardless of the vaccines. We're going to be told by the national administration that for the time being, which could be 5, 10, or 15 years, we need to act as if we're going to get killed by the virus. Tomorrow, my newsletter that was so graciously promoted a few minutes ago, I'm running a story from the CDC. And apparently, now that we have a new president, the criteria to be listed as a victim of COVID and dying from COVID has been slightly changed. By slightly, I mean 90% of the people who are listed as having died of COVID didn't. And now they're recognizing that fact, but they're not going to make it retroactive. Therefore, all those terrible deaths will be listed on Donald Trump, and it will be Joe Biden say, you see, I solved the problem. But you still have to wear masks, still have to have social distancing. You won't be able to go to a football game. You won't have your kids go to schools. You won't be able to go to Disneyland. You won't be able to gather at church. But Joe Biden solved the problem. And how did he do it? By changing the criteria, not by changing the medical facts. So at the same time, the Democrats are out there trying to make trouble for Republicans and trying to ban Republicans from holding office, which is what fascist nations do. The ruling party always tries to get rid of the head of the opposition party and their loyal supporters. That means us. It is quite possible the next step is to take away our voting rights. But that's the next step of the fascist state. And don't be surprised when you see that. So what we have in Sacramento is the meltdown of the Democrats. In Washington, the meltdown. And as many of you know, I live in Simi Valley, which is near Hollywood. There's an actress by the name of Sophia Bush, who was on the last show she was on was a TV show called Chicago PD. And personally, I love the show. I still watch it. And she was a detective on that show. She has now decided that Congress needs to declare Republicans as terrorists using the same language that AOC is used. And you know what they do with terrorists? They lock us up. And so this poor lady is just having a real meltdown with the idea that there's 73 plus million Americans that supported Trump, and she can't get her head around it. And therefore, it must be something wrong with us for doing it. And so you have the Democrat Party, the Democrats in Sacramento and Washington. You have the Hollywood set melting down. And through all of this, notice that the media has been silent about the culture, the cancel culture that we're experiencing, where people aren't even allowed to wear a MAGA hat without being called a terrorist, where people aren't allowed to say, I support the Constitution on a college campus without being isolated, tarred, feathered, and thrown out. Professors have literally been fired from colleges for suggesting that they would like to see a debate between Biden and Trump on the issues. And that alone, the idea that you give a platform to Donald Trump is enough to get you fired on many college campuses. So we're living in very difficult times. We have to be willing to be courageous and speak and stand up. At the same time, we have an organization called the Lincoln Project, which has been protected by the California Republican Party, and its leaders have been protected by the chair of the state Republican Party. And the Lincoln Project, through an affiliate organization called the Transparent Trump Accountability Project, they are going to be using Democrat money and George Soros money to try to defeat 10 of the 11 members of Congress from California in the primaries. And this group has so far raised $30 million to do that. And they have a list of members of Congress that they are going to go after on a national basis. And they've already announced they're going after 10 of the 11 here in California. So we're going to see a lot of money spent against Devin Nunes in the primaries. They're going to get somebody to register as a Republican and run against Nunes and Issa and LaMalfa and McClintock and the rest of the Republicans, apparently, except for David Valadao down in the Central Valley, because he did vote to impeach President Trump, and that is enough for them to support him. So we're going to be facing a primary in 2022 like none before. And let me give you some dates that you need to look at. Allegedly, as of this moment, the Census Bureau is supposed to make public on April 15th the data for redistricting of members of Congress. On or about April 15th, unless they move the date further out, we will find out how many members of Congress we're going to lose from the state of California. We already know we're going to lose one because of the lack of population. We may lose two and even three by that time. Then the legislature gets those numbers, the governor gets the numbers, and they turn it over to the redistricting commission, which is supposed to have a report by December 15th as to the boundaries for the new Assembly, State Senate, and congressional districts. That doesn't give much time before the March closing date to file to run for office. The primary election in 2022 is going to be in June of 2022, so there'll be time to campaign. But for a lot of candidates, they won't have a lot of time to build their operation because they won't know the district that they live in. And for Assembly and Senate candidates, you have to live in the district. For congressional candidates, you can live anywhere in the state. And so that's going to be something that we need to look for and watch. Some people have asked me, well, how do we lobby the redistricting commission? There is no way to lobby that commission. It's a predetermined group of people that have been selected, nominal Republicans. 10 years ago, the people who were Republicans on the redistricting commission were very nominal Republicans registered, and that was just about all. This time, it looks like it's the same canard, that this is a commission made up of Republicans and Democrats. It really isn't. It's a commission made up of liberals and progressives, and some of whom are registered as Republican. And so they're going to make those districts based on demographics rather than communities of interest or trying to keep the boundaries of local cities together. I live in Simi Valley. We're broken up into two congressional districts. We have a part of our city as part of another congressional district other than Mike Garcia's. We're in the state Senate district that's divided when it shouldn't be, and we could fix that. But the Democrats are going to make sure there's as few Republicans as possible in the Assembly and Senate, and as few Republicans left in Congress. And if I was a betting person, I would make a bet that they will try, whatever it takes, to run McCarthy against Nunes, or Valadao against Nunes, or Valadao against McCarthy. They're going to try to take out one of those just by the use of the redistricting process. And there's Ken Calvert could be in trouble. Darrell Issa can be in trouble just by moving the district lines a little bit. We could lose both those seats as well. So it doesn't take an election. It just takes control of the process. And that's what the Democrats have, is control of the redistricting process with no oversight whatsoever from voters or from the community. So those are some of the things on a national level and political level. There's something that's going to affect you in San Jose, specifically San Jose, and probably in every other part of the state. A couple of days ago, Ralph's and Food for Less in Long Beach announced that they were closing their stores, not because they lack patrons, but because the city of Long Beach made a determination that all grocery workers should receive a bonus of $4 an hour for being heroes. In other words, government is in Long Beach is now making the determination as to wages and benefits for workers. Unions don't do it anymore. Employers don't do it. Government has taken that over. Right now, your city council in San Jose is looking to do the same thing. Oakland has already done it, and there's already a lawsuit against Oakland and the city of Montebello, which is in Los Angeles County, which has also done that. And we're going to see some things out of this we're not going to like. First of all, the price of food is going to go up to pay the extra $4. Government is mandating the extra pay, but not going to use its money, our tax dollars to pay it. It will come from the coffers of the private firms. This is a major move in the state for the state of California to take over and get us used to the idea that you no longer need unions or employers to set wage rates. It will be done by government. Who else does that? A fascist state. But your city council in San Jose is now debating this. In all probability, it will pass in San Jose. Sacramento and San Francisco are looking to do that. And so you raise the pay, you raise the cost of doing business. The first thing that happens is that these employers, unable to afford this extra pay, now have to fire people, which means more people go on the unemployment rolls so that government can then take care of more people on a situation that they created themselves. This is just another example on the margins of how government is taking over private enterprise, how government is taking over private property. You know that the legislature has extended the moratorium on rent until June 30th. That means people will continue to live rent-free until June 30th. Landlords are still expected to provide water, electricity, and maintenance, but not get any income to do that, which means those that a lot of the small-time investors who are doing this are going to wind up bankrupt so that government can take over their property. And that's part of the goal, is to end private property. And the whole idea of the rent moratorium is for government to control rent. If you can't get rent control passed, which we keep defeating at the ballot box, you do it another way. There's no rent to be paid. And just because the law now says June 30th, the law until a few days ago said January 31st, and you could bet your bottom dollar that when it comes down to June 30th, they will extend it for several months beyond that. They really want people who invest money in California to be hurt. And what does that what happens then? People will no longer invest in California. We are creating slums because of the rent moratorium, and investors will invest in other states, not in California. And just like the big corporations are leaving the state, you're going to find small-time investors leaving the state as well. All of this means that Governor Newsom is involved in making sure that we have a long-term depression in California, not a short-term one. He and the Democrats in Sacramento are making sure that there is every opportunity for the state of California to need to control the economics of the state. Let us also be reminded that the state of California gets 34% of its oil from outside the state and outside the country. We are the only state in the union that does that, 34%. And now that the Harris-Biden administration is cutting off oil drilling, and Newsom and the Democrats are cutting off fracking and oil drilling in California, we're going to have even higher prices for gasoline. As of yesterday, the average price for gasoline in California was $3.27, which is 66 cents above the national average. This morning, the price of oil, thanks to the Harris-Biden administration, has gone up to $57 a barrel when the market opened this morning. And the whole idea is to make the middle class and the poor dependent upon government transportation, not to use their cars, and to be dependent on disease-laden, crime-ridden, unreliable, dirty government transportation, buses and trains. None of us want that. They're all money losers. People want freedom and independence, and Newsom and the Democrats are taking it away. And one of the methods of doing it is to make the cost of gasoline so expensive that we can't afford to travel other than to work and back in our own cars. And even then, they want us to use government transportation instead. I could just see Jan tomorrow morning visiting friends in Los Gatos, riding her bicycle from her home there and back, because that's what government wants. And I don't know what the transportation system is. I doubt if there's a good bus service from where you live, Jan, to Los Gatos and back. So there's just a real opportunity for the government to cancel our ability to live a clean, good lifestyle, which is why San Francisco has lost 10% of its population in the last year, and why California continues to lose population. We lost approximately 130 net, about 134,000 people in calendar year 2020. But the good news is, in there to replace them, the open borders, we have a lot more illegal aliens in California. So that's what's replacing productive people. I'd like to be able to open up to questions, because there's always so many issues involved, and I can't go over every one that wants to be heard. So one day I'd be very happy to answer questions and give a full explanation of what's going on.
Today, you've got Doug and me ready to field questions from people, and there's a lot of insightful questions here. First off, we've got questions about what is the, when did this CDC thing change? And do you have a reference for it so we can see exactly what they've done?
That's going to be in my newsletter tomorrow, and they've done it in the last 2 or 3 weeks. They've changed the criteria.
Great. Okay. And Doug, are you with us? Are you going to field questions now? Join on in if you can.
Yes, I'm going to do that. I've been writing furious notes from Steve's comments, and it's blurring on my paper from the tears.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
It's getting scary, really scary.
Yeah. So someone had asked about, do you have any comments? This is from James. He had any comments on the secret ballot to keep anti-Trump Liz Cheney in her positions, with that going on, and then Representative from Georgia, Marjorie Greene, removed from her committees, are many people going to pull back? How do you fight if leaders in our government are being, and as you said in the beginning, are being attacked? How is a common citizen supposed to fight this? It just seems so fearful. I think that's the gist of the question.
I can't imagine that Minority Leader McCarthy has not already filed a petition to strip AOC from her committees on the basis that she called every Republican member of Congress a terrorist. That she should be stripped. Personally, I don't think anybody should be stripped of anything. They can make as outrageous a statement as they want. That's what general elections are about. That's what primaries elections are about. Allow the people in those districts to determine who their member of Congress is. And then that member of Congress, whether it's AOC or Marjorie Greene, all deserve the full rights and privileges of being a member of Congress until the voters say no. But there's a second part of your question, which actually was your first, and that is the secret ballot. Let me give you, in regard to Liz Cheney, let me give you my theory on balloting. People have the right, you and I and everyone on here, have the right in a primary or a general election or a special election or a recall election, we have the right as voters to a secret ballot. But once you are elected to public office, your vote has to be made public. There are no secret backroom deals where you could vote secretly and nobody knows. You've been elected to represent a constituency, whether it be a state or a congressional district or an assembly or state senate district. And when you take a vote, the people should know how you voted instead of hiding in the bunker like Joe Biden did during the general election. So I'm in favor of private votes for voters in elections and for elected officials. If they believe some way, yes or no, they should be proud enough to stand up and say, I vote yay or I vote nay.
Have you figured out where to, is your CA politicalreview.com in a secure spot that they can't bring you down?
I'm glad you asked that question. As we already know, Wendy, the White House, Cedar Sinai, Kaiser Permanente, the Defense Department, the NSA have all been hacked. Yet we're being told that when we vote for CRP chair, it's an unhackable system. I mean, what are they talking about? A 12th grader could hack anything. The Chinese and Russians do it on a daily basis, thousands of times. So I'm not concerned about the hacking as much as I am concerned about something else. We all live in California. That means we have brownouts and blackouts, and we don't know when they're going to occur, whether they'll be lasting for 5 minutes, or as some friends of mine in Thousand Oaks, the town next to Simi Valley, they had their electricity off for 4 days. Some friends in San Diego at a place called Rancho Santa Fe, which is an extremely wealthy community. If you have a $3 million home in that community, you're living in a slum housing project. It's a very expensive place to live. John Cox lives in Rancho Santa Fe. God bless them. I mean, that's great. They lost electricity for 5 days a couple of weeks ago. 5 days. People with houses that expensive all of us should expect it. So we don't. The real problem is brownouts and blackouts caused by government policy of not allowing the building of more energy plants, adding to the electronic grid system. We're tearing down hydroelectric dams in Oregon that provide California with electricity, and we're paying for it. We're paying for tearing down dams in Oregon so that the cost of energy could go up in California and make it less reliable. That's what the Democrats have done. So it's a bigger story than just hacking and the internet.
So I have a couple of questions here in the Q&A, and one of them is talking about the California freeways. James, again, he said, when I moved to California, we had freeways. Now they're all converted to toll roads. Are those contracts let to insiders of these politicians, or are those open bids?
Down in Orange County, they have multiple lawsuits against a toll road down there based on corruption. Did friends get it or did the best bidder get it? That's just one example. Now I want to make a complaint. Maybe I shouldn't, but I will. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity of going to, I believe, to Sonoma. And to do that, you have to take the 101 freeway. You have to go on a bridge, and I think you go into either San Mateo or Marin County. And when you get to this toll booth, there was nobody there, and a sign that says, no cash, you'll get an invoice in the mail. Yesterday, and this was about 3 weeks ago, yesterday I get this big envelope, bright red envelope saying, your invoice for toll road. And I haven't even opened it yet. I'm just disgusted. And I found out from a friend that there's some bridges that are $12. Now, let me give you a secret. In 1932, when they designed the Golden Gate Bridge and financed it through a bond, the bond was very clear that when the bond is paid off, there's no more tolls on the Golden Gate Bridge. Just another example of government lying to us. They got our money back in the early 30s, said that when it's paid off, which it was, I believe, in the 60s, then there'll be no more tolls. How many of you have paid a toll recently in the Golden Gate Bridge? That's what government does. By the way, last year I did a story. California has the worst roads in the nation out of all 50 states. So that's where our money goes. But here's the bigger problem. As you know, the money for the roads comes from the gas tax. You also know that Newsom and Biden want to get rid of gas operated cars. In fact, after 2035, 14 years from now, you will not be allowed to buy a gas engine car in the state of California. So what happens when there's no more gas taxes because everybody has electric cars? Well, the answer is they are going to do to us via a mileage tax per mile we drive, like they did with Social Security. When Social Security became a thing, we were told, don't worry, we don't have to cap it at 2%, which is what it was, because it will never go beyond 2%. Government lied. You know, it's now over 12% in combination with the employer and employee contribution. So you could expect a very low number for the original mileage. There's something else that goes with it. How do they know, Doug, how much you drove? They are going to have a device on your car showing how much you drove. And when you do that, they'll also know where you drove. So if you went to one of those Trump rallies, if you went to a Republican meeting, if you decided to go to the Chamber of Commerce or to the grocery store, they will know.
The social media credit score from China on your phone.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Wendy, did you have a question you want to ask?
Have you given us stats on what's going on with the recall now?
Oh,
Are we close?
as of last night, over 1.4 million signatures are in. We still need 2 million signatures. We will get there. That's not even an issue anymore. Now the Democrats are realizing that there will be a recall. And so they're smearing in the LA Times and San Francisco Chronicle anybody who's involved in it. Did you know that the guy who started this, Orrin Heatley, used to be a deputy sheriff in Yolo County? I mean, that's a terrible thing to do. And they made him look like he's a nefarious killer of people because he was a deputy sheriff before he retired. And I know I've known Orrin now for about a year and a half. Nice, he's a rancher. I think up in El Dorado County is where he lives now. Has horses. He's just a nice guy. But he was a deputy sheriff for close to 30 years, and that's not bad and it's not good. It's just a fact. Unless you're a Democrat or the Chronicle or the Times, that's nefarious.
I've been noticing all these polls coming out too that say, oh, people don't think Newsom's that bad, trying to skew our thoughts.
Well, PPIC, Berkeley, and one other poll have come out showing him between 50% down to 46% approval, when in September it was at 62%. So his numbers continue to fall, and they will fall as long as the schools are closed, as long as the churches are closed, as long as sporting events and movie houses are closed, restaurants are closed. I mean, it's 60 degrees right now in Simi Valley. And at 12 o'clock, I'm having lunch with some friends. And obviously, it's going to be outdoors. And I'm going to have to bring in a heavy coat because it's cold here. I don't want to catch a cold. I don't want to get pneumonia. But that's what Governor Newsom wants from us, instead of going inside where it's nice and warm.
Sad. Okay, who's throwing their hat in the ring?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. So we can start supporting them.
Well, be careful who you support. You don't want to wind up with another Arnold, Meg Whitman, or Neil Kashkari. So vet the candidates carefully. That being said, you have John Cox is running. You have Kevin Faulkner running. You have a guy by the name of Diego Martinez running. Yesterday, I spoke to another potential candidate, former Congressman Doug Osee. I spoke with him. He's running. You have Errol Weber. You have Major Williams. You have a guy named Glover out of Placer County running. We're going to have a wide variety of candidates. I keep getting emails from people asking, well, should I run? Should I run? And I try to explain what it takes to run. Are you ready for it? I never tell anybody not to run. I did that many years ago, and that was a mistake, and I don't do it anymore. But those are some. And by the way, there's a major push to get two other people into the race. One is Rick Grinnell, the former ambassador to Germany, and second, Larry Elder.
Wow.
There's a lot of people who are pushing. I've been on some calls where I've been asked to help that effort. I've stayed away from that because as chair of the state Republican Party, you shouldn't be promoting a candidate in a primary.
Rick Grinnell hedged on Hannity the other night. I don't know if he'd stand up and do it, but maybe.
We don't know. Everybody is being coy. And so, you have to look at their backgrounds. Which ones who are holding office wanted to raise taxes? Which ones supported Trump and which ones opposed him? Which candidate is involved in being investigated for corruption? You have to do a good job of vetting these candidates, and they try to make it seem like everybody loves them. And a lot of that is just bullying and the establishment pulling itself together. The ones that gave us Schwarzenegger, the ones that gave us Whitman, the ones that gave us Kashkari, all have their own favorite candidate.
Okay, go ahead, Doug.
Well, so I have a question on these elections. It's just so unnerving to see the corruption and the gerrymandering you just brought up. But with Alex Padilla is now the new senator from, he took the seat from Harris, right? He was given that by, okay. So who's the new Secretary of State, and how do we take advantage of the new guy, or how do we get our election rolls in order and make our state elections for all offices fair and free by 2022?
The new Secretary of State is Shirley Weber, a former Assemblywoman from San Diego. She makes Alex Padilla look responsible.
Oh my God.
You would not want her. One of the things I've been saying is that as chair, one of the first things I would do is sue the state of California on the basis of a civil rights violation, that the voting rolls are have not been audited. We know 440,000 dead people or people moved out of the state got live ballots. We know that 3,500 people voted on November 3rd in California, who then voted 3,500 in the state of Nevada as well. They voted twice. We also know that the Padilla refused to do an audit of illegal aliens that were put on the voting rolls by the Department of Motor Vehicles. And so I would go into the federal courts, use this as a civil rights violation. And some of you may remember in the 60s and 70s when school districts wouldn't desegregate, judges took over those school districts and appointed a master to run the school districts. And
Bad choice of words.
And I'm going to, that's the legal term.
Right.
And so I'm going to ask that a federal judge appoint a master to clean up our voting rolls and our election process. And that, by the way, also takes it out of the hands of the legislature when a master is appointed by a federal judge. And that's what it's going to take. Sending out a press release saying this is terrible. By the way, we've yet to see a press release from the California Republican Party denouncing the Secretary of State, Padilla, for sending out 440,000 ballots to dead people. It's been a non-issue with the state party. They've done nothing about this. And worse, they have said nothing about it, as if this is normal and it's okay. It's not okay with me. And we need to take the action needed to have honest elections in California.
Steve, we can't rely on these people at all. We got to do this ourselves. I was pondering, we have this big infrastructure set up right now with the Recall Gavin signature gathering. What if we put a citizen referendum through that same thing to clean up election law? What do you think?
There's a lot of us talking about doing that and a few other issues. And I'm working with a small team of people for ballot measures for 2022 and 2024 to do that. And the first one that's being worked on is schools of choice, to get kids out of failed government schools, stop being hostages to the unions and the corrupt legislature, and give the kids an opportunity for an education. That's the first one we're working on. But the idea of forcing an audit, forcing honest elections, that's a good one. It's been discussed. Nothing has been decided, but we're looking at 4 or 5 different issues to put on the 2022 ballot.
It's due to our complacence. We have ignored this politics is dirty, politics is ugly, law is boring. We've ignored this for decades, and we have got to sorry, I lecture these people all the time. We've got to get back into the game here and quit ignoring this stuff. So I was just wondering what you thought of because we cannot rely on the legislature. I was talking to Kevin Kiley's office this week about that, and he was saying, oh yeah, we just need to get a few more assemblymen in there. It's not going to happen.
No.
Unless we fix the elections. We got to do it ourselves. I don't know. We'll talk more on that later. But
Exactly. We have to do it ourselves. It's not going to be done for us. And if the state party won't sue, then we need to sue on a civil rights violation. The real problem is You see in some of my notes, I say leaders lead. It's not enough to speak out or send out a press release. You have to do the actual work, and that's what's not being done.
So, Steve, I have another question on the judges that come around and they're voted on. It seems like the legislature and the local rules being passed without our approval have to go to judges. But when I vote, I try to find information on all the candidates. And if I don't know the candidate, I won't vote for them. But judges, there's never any information on these guys, or at least I haven't been able to find it. How do you, what do you suggest in these very important positions? Now, how do we vet these guys?
There's a organization called Craig Huey's Reality Forum, and I've known Craig since we were teenagers. He puts out a guide to judges at election time,
Okay.
and you'll want to see his guide and connect with him and help him create the guide for your county.
Great.
But he does this statewide in a lot of counties, not all of them, unfortunately, but a lot of counties.
But Doug, too, what you're saying, at the lower levels of judges, yeah, there's not much information out there.
Yeah.
Struggled with that like crazy.
And-
Like this
and-
one that was on the last ballot. The only thing I could find is that they were trying to get him out of being a judge, although he'd been there for 4 years or 6 years, because he was a Republican and he came out as a Republican. So someone put him on the ballot. This is crazy.
Well, Craig does a good job of analyzing everything from Superior Court judge up to the Court of Appeals.
And his name is spelled Huey's.
S.
Is Huey.
It's called Craig Huey's Reality Forum.
All right. So Huey is spelled that way.
Yeah.
All right. We had another question that came in on the housing, that San Jose is now passing a housing. And you mentioned this in your last talk a couple weeks ago, that they can put up 4plexes and 8plexes in a split lot. That, you know, what can we do about that? It's a grand design at the top level where they're taking bankrupt properties. I mean, I don't know, what can we do?
Well, that's actually a local issue, and the people in the local community need to organize and support the continuation of current zoning rules rather than these waivers to end single-family homes in San Jose. One of the reasons people are moving out of San Jose and the Silicon Valley is because the high cost of living and the lack of quality housing. And by doing this, they're not putting up great housing; they're just putting up units. They don't care what it looks like or feels like. They're not going to live in it. And so it takes the local people to say no. And you really need to go to each of your members of the council and say, this is just wrong. And I would go to forums. I would have large numbers of people visit them in their council offices, force a meeting with them. We have to be respectful, but they need to respect us as well.
Well, the challenge is, and I ran for council on this issue, and the current council in my town of Saratoga, they're just acquiesced. They say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. I don't agree with this, but there's nothing we can do about it. This is our number from the state. And I think the only way the people are heard is if the council says, no, we can't do it. It's physically impossible to change, to add these many units. You'll never make it. They're not doing that, though.
Well, I'll tell you what happened here in Simi Valley. Somebody decided they're going to go 278 units and in a terrible place. And the city council voted against it. They got a letter within 24 hours from the attorney general saying, you will reverse your call or we sue you. And a couple of months later, they reversed it because they couldn't afford the lawsuit against the state to protect the citizens of Simi Valley. We're now going to have a slum created by government edict a total disaster for our community. And this is going on in other places. Huntington Beach refused, their city council refused to abide by the state's mandate. And they're being sued by the state of California now.
That's the same formula in Saratoga. They don't have a budget. It's a low cost operation city. It's run very well. It's a balanced budget. They don't have any money for lawsuits. So anytime anybody complains, they back off almost immediately.
Mm-hmm. And what I would do in that case, Doug, I would sue the city for doing this as a civil rights violation.
So they have two lawsuits on either end.
Just do lots of lawsuits. Force them to say, we got a problem here. And if they don't, I'd rather see a city like Saratoga go bankrupt than a city like Saratoga become a crime-ridden slum.
This comes down to, Gina actually put a comment there. I sit at work and most of them have no idea what's happening in the state, let alone the country and county too, I guess you could say. We have a communication problem, and Shannon Grove came and spoke to our group week before last, I guess it was.
Mm-hmm.
She said that first off, we need to get in the face of all of these people because they need to know that we're there and we disagree with them. Second, she was saying that apparently in CAGOP, they're going to try to communicate with people via, she didn't use the word, but I think she meant memes. We got to figure out ways of communicating better. We got to get the story out.
Well,
You got plans for that, Steve?
First of all, now that Jessica's under terrible stress that she is going to lose being chairman, they're making all sorts of statements and promises. Remember 2 years ago, I talked about the need for voter registration. She finally agreed. Yeah, we need voter registration. And for 2 years, she did nothing. And then last week, she put out her platform. Number one, we need voter registration. Well, why didn't you do it in the last 2 years? So when I hear, oh, they're going to do this or that, I don't, no one cares because no one believes it anymore. They've not told the truth on a lot of things. But the idea of communication is important. But there's something else going on. Where do you put those memes? You put them on Facebook and Twitter, right? Facebook and Twitter will ban you. So we have to go to Gab and Parler if it ever opens again. And we have to find alternative means because you can't go to TikTok, you can't go to Instagram, you can't go to YouTube. And so it's great to have these wonderful ideas a few years too late.
Yeah. Speaking of platforms, the CEO of Parler just announced he's resigning. What is going on with Parler, and what is your what do you think will happen long term?
Well, as you saw yesterday or the day before, the CEO of Parler was fired, and that's when I found out that the real owner of Parler is a lady by the name of Rebecca Mercer, who I'm sure none of you have ever heard of. She and her husband are Texas multi-billionaires, very strong in the Republican Party, very strong early supporters of Donald Trump, and they've been smeared by the left and the progressives for several years. They have donated money to causes like schools of choice, pension reform in various states, not just the state of Texas where they live. And the other owner of it is a guy by the name of Dan Bongino. You know him from Fox. He's the other owner. And so they put out a statement yesterday saying they are going to come back. They're just trying to work out some of the technical details because they can't use the normal platforms or services like Amazon's cloud or some of the others or Google's cloud version and servers, that they need to find somebody independent of all that. And they just have to work out details. I think they come back knowing Bongino and the pedigree of Mercer. It'll come back strong again as a strong conservative venue for us, and they have the money behind them to make it into the next big thing. So I feel good about that. But I've not used Twitter or Facebook in more than a month. I don't post anything. I uh, uh, just before Christmas, I posted something on Facebook, and I got a raft of hate mail. What are you still doing on Facebook? They hate us. Why are you still giving them credibility? I mean, it was pretty bad. And some of them were good friends of mine who I trust and respect. And they were really upset that I even posted something on Facebook. And I haven't done it since because it's no longer a platform that allows conservatives to be heard. And I won't go anywhere where my friends can't be heard.
Twitter's the same. Anything you post, you get all these trolls just slamming you left, right, and center. It's bad. So
Yeah.
Well, so I want to put a plug in for the efforts. Is it Sam and Don, I think, that do this how to get your privacy back by getting off of Google, moving over to Proton Mail. Those guys that they presented last session 2 weeks ago, and just let everybody know about it, because it's really hard to get the message out if you're worried about your privacy. And that's the first, and it's a hard step. It's a daily exercise to move things off of Gmail to Proton Mail as your email, get moved into credit union from banks, all these things. But it's really the only way. I mean, it's a grassroots movement. You got to put the effort in.
Well, let me tell you what the governor of Florida is doing. He's getting a bill passed that if any platform, Facebook, Google, Twitter, etc., bans a politician, an elected official, they get fined $100,000.
All right.
The whole problem is it should have been $1 million, not $100,000. Facebook wouldn't worry about a few $100,000 going in fines. But
Is it per incident?
per incident, yeah, that's correct. And so that's one way of promoting that type of legislation. The Australian government is telling Facebook and Twitter, we don't care about your being an international firm. You ban any of our people, you are banned.
Well, they're very aware of China because China's bullying them quite a bit the last year. So they see these platforms as, enemies.
And it's interesting, Twitter and Twitter and Facebook allow the banning of people in China because the Chinese government demands that. And now they're banning our people here. And is our government demanding that? Do we know?
they should be.
Well, we now know that the former chief counsel for Facebook is now in the Department of Justice.
Mhm.
And what section is he in? The antitrust section, the one that handles this. So,
Yeah.
in other words, he's there to protect Facebook from the government.
Those guys are crafty. They are really scary and amazing.
And he's getting paid to do it.
Yeah.
Well, he's not getting paid as much in government as he was at Facebook, but you could bet there's some side deal or future deal that will make him whole again.
Insider trading.
Truly.
That's exactly what this is. I had thought of it in that term, but that's correct. It is insider trading.
It is scary. How's your
Well,
campaign going? And
As
tell us
how can
about
we
the
help you?
contract.
It's going great. Here's how you can help me. I need to get every delegate to send me a proxy, even if they intend to be there on Sunday morning, the 21st, to vote. And you're only going to have a 5-minute time period in which to vote. Now, Wendy, do you know when those 5 minutes are?
No, there's
They're not
just-
going to tell you to the last minute. So they're playing games with the election. So the way around that is to have everybody give the proxy. Now, somebody could put this in chat. and I need your proxy if you're a delegate, and I know, Wendy, you're a delegate,
Mhm.
and I know that Peter is a delegate, and there are a few others on this that are delegates. Please put and write this down. Please send your proxy to me by next Friday, the 12th, and the address is Stephen Frank, 607 Azure, Azure, Hills Drive, Simi Valley, 93065. All you do is sign the proxy, put your address on it, and nothing more. Don't put a date on it. Don't put a proxy holder on it. Just sign it and put your address on it.
Oh, we don't have to find a proxy. You just want
No,
to.
we will find the proxy for you.
Oh, great.
We
Okay.
have people waiting for the proxies. And if there's a brownout or a blackout and you can't vote, we have your proxy.
Wow.
So,
Maybe the side that doesn't cheat and doesn't do funny business like this. That is screwy.
the other side, I could, you don't have enough time for me to tell you about all the manipulations of the system that they've done.
But if they're losing seats and they're not being aggressive to protect and defend the Republican Party in the state of California, what are they thinking? Are they just plugging holes on a sinking ship and they don't care? Or?
They'd rather be big fish in a small pond than a small fish in a big pond. Now, the other thing you're going to notice, and we'll come out with it in a while, you'll notice that an extremely large number of staff people for legislators and consultants are going to be delegates. These are the people who make their money from the establishment. And instead of real people, real volunteers, real workers in the Republican Party, they're turning the party over to the professional class.
Wow, we got to fight this all over the place.
Just FYI, the proxy can be obtained from the CAGOP website, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I just download it, sign it, and mail it to me. You can't PDF it to me. You can't email it to me, because what I have to provide them is what's called a proxy with a wet signature, which means a real signature rather than a Xerox signature or a PDF signature or an email signature.
Okay, are you going to send an email out to?
Yes, we're sending emails out to every delegate about this process, asking for their proxies. And we also have a team of people who are calling every delegate asking for the proxies.
Okay.
There's a lot of people involved in this campaign. Dozens are now working on a daily basis as volunteers helping me. So I'm quite honored that so many people have decided to join the team.
Hey, we appreciate you stepping in there and doing the fight, Steve. We really do.
And waking us up, because we just don't know what's going on out there. We really appreciate your time.
I appreciate the great work you guys do on the grassroots level as an activist in your community, your county. That's what it takes, city by city, county by county, and it all adds up.
Well, thank you for today.
All right.
Peter asked for the address again. Are you going to be able to?
Yeah, well, we will take care of getting Peter
Yeah.
the address.
You take care of him, Jan.
I'll take care of him. Thank you, Steve. We always appreciate you. It's always so informative. And for those that keep asking, yes, this is recorded. It's on, they'll be on our website as soon as our volunteers can do it. And we'll be on the Rumble. We keep adding things to both Rumble and YouTube. So if we get thrown off of one, there's space somewhere else. So
good. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity of being with you again. I really appreciate this. Thank you.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
And
Thank
thank you,
you.
Doug, for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
My
Yes,
pleasure.
God bless.
you
Bye.
too. Okay, we'll see you all on the 24th for our in-person meeting. Kevin Kiley,
Yay.
interesting. It's a book signing. His book, he's charging $15 for it, and that's just 20 cents over cost or something. He just wants to get the word out there about why we need to recall Newsom. So February 24th at the Three Flames. Right now, it's an in-person meeting.
Yeah. And
Yay.
Is that way?
we'll get the information out like the beginning of next week, right, Wendy? As soon as we settle everything with
Settle on
Three
this.
Flames.
Yeah, and the timing of everything. But put that on your calendar for now.
All right.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us. Tell your friends it's worth listening to this.
Because you'll learn a lot, although it's scary. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Take
See you
care.
next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.